Commander Zixtal of the Hegemony Fleet clicked his mandibles in amusement as he studied the crewed vessel approaching their patrol zone. The human ship, if it could even be called that, looked like a collection of metal scraps welded together by blind children. Its hull was a patchwork of different materials, clearly repaired multiple times with whatever the humans could find. Exposed cables ran along its exterior like veins, and the engine emissions were so inefficient they left a visible trail of waste particles. "Look at this pathetic display," Zixtal chittered to his bridge crew, his 4 eyes gleaming with superiority. "The humans dare to call this a warship. My personal shuttle has better armor plating." The bridge erupted in clicking laughter from his officers. The Velkari were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and military precision. Their ships were sleek works of art, with hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal and weapons systems that could tear apart asteroids with surgical precision. To see these newcomer humans bumbling around in their makeshift vessels was beyond insulting. It was comedic. "Sir, the human vessel is hailing us," reported Navigation Officer Clit-On, her voice carrying the same dismissive tone that had become standard when dealing with Earth's representatives. "Put them through. Let us hear what these primitives have to say." The main screen flickered, revealing a human male in a worn uniform. His face bore the scars of someone who had seen real combat, but to the Velkari, he looked like just another soft-skinned creature playing at being a warrior. "This is Captain Reynolds of the Terran merchant vessel Resilient Hope. We're carrying medical supplies to the colony on Kepler 442b, requesting safe passage through Hegemony space." Zixtal leaned back in his command throne, a structure that elevated him above his crew to display his authority. "Human Captain Reynolds, your vessel is barely spaceworthy. We are amazed it has not fallen apart during your journey. Perhaps we should escort you to the nearest shipyard for proper repairs." Captain Reynolds maintained his composure, though his jaw tightened slightly. "Thank you for the offer, Commander, but we're operating within acceptable parameters. We just need passage clearance." "Acceptable parameters?" Zixtal's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of genuine amusement among his species. "Your ship registers energy readings so low we initially mistook it for a derelict. Your weapons systems appear to be museum pieces, and your hull integrity is questionable at best. How do you expect to defend yourselves if pirates attack?" The human captain's expression remained neutral. "We manage." This response drew more chittering laughter from the Velkari bridge crew. The idea that this ramshackle vessel could defend itself against anything more dangerous than a space rodent was absurd. "Tell me, Captain Reynolds," Zixtal continued, "how does it feel to represent a species that builds ships from scrap metal and outdated technology? The Galactic Council debates whether humanity should even be allowed in civilized space." "Your vessels are safety hazards that endanger other ships." Captain Reynolds paused for a moment, and something shifted in his eyes. "Commander, we've been flying these ships for 200 years of interstellar travel. They've carried us through 3 colonial wars, asteroid fields that would crush most vessels, and solar storms that have disabled ships 10 times our size. They may not look pretty, but they get the job done." "Pretty?" Zixtal's translator struggled with the human concept. "These are not about aesthetics, human. These are about competence. Your technology is centuries behind the galactic standard. Your military consists of converted civilian vessels held together with hope and desperation." The Velkari commander stood from his throne, his tall insectoid frame casting an imposing shadow. "We have observed your fleet movements. Cargo haulers with welded-on weapon mounts. Passenger ships retrofitted with military sensors. Even your dedicated warships appear to be constructed from repurposed mining equipment. It is embarrassing." Captain Reynolds leaned forward slightly. "Commander, those converted civilian vessels have protected human space from 3 different alien incursions. Those retrofitted passenger ships evacuated 2 million colonists from Proxima Centauri when the Kethvar attacked, and those repurposed mining ships held the line at the Battle of Wolf 359 until reinforcements arrived. Against whom? Zixtal demanded. Pirates, scavengers, minor raiding fleets. You have never faced a true military power. The hegemony fleet alone could sweep through human space in a matter of weeks. The human captain was quiet for several seconds. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality, harder, more focused. You're probably right, Commander. Our ships aren't as advanced as yours. Our weapons aren't as powerful. Our hulls aren't as strong. Zixtal nodded approvingly. Finally, the human was acknowledging reality. But, Reynolds continued, they're our ships. We built them with our own hands, maintained them with our own sweat, and crewed them with people who believe in what they're protecting. That counts for something. Sentiment, Zixtal dismissed. Emotional attachment to inferior technology. This is exactly why humanity will never advance beyond its current primitive state. Around the bridge, other hegemony vessels had joined the conversation via secure channels. Commander Vorthak of the battlecruiser Eternal Dominance was sharing tactical scans of human ships his patrol had encountered. The readings were universally disappointing. Low-grade alloys, inefficient power systems, weapons that appeared to be kinetic projectile launchers rather than proper energy weapons. Captain Reynolds, Zixtal said, returning his attention to the human. We will grant your passage request. However, understand that you travel through hegemony space at your own risk. We cannot guarantee the safety of such a fragile vessel. Understood, Commander. Thank you for your courtesy. The transmission ended, and Zixtal turned to his crew. Make a note in the patrol log. Human vessel passed through our sector. Vessel condition, barely functional. Crew competence, questionable. Threat level, negligible. As the resilient Hope limped away at what the Velkari considered an embarrassingly slow speed, the bridge crew continued their analysis of human capabilities. Science Officer Mel Dunn had compiled extensive data on human technology from various encounters across the galaxy. Sir, Mel Dunn reported, I have analyzed 17 different human vessels over the past 6 months. The pattern is consistent. They use chemical rockets for propulsion. Chemical rockets. Their fastest ships barely achieve 0.3 light speed. Most hegemony courier drones travel faster than their military vessels. What about their weapons? Asked Tactical Officer Vexprin. Primitive kinetic weapons primarily. They launch physical projectiles at their targets. Some use guided missiles. But even those rely on chemical explosives rather than antimatter warheads. I detected no plasma cannons, no particle beam weapons, no quantum disruptors. It is like observing a civilization that never progressed beyond throwing rocks. Commander Zixtal considered this information. The galactic hegemony had been expanding for 3 centuries, bringing advanced civilization to primitive species throughout the galaxy. Humanity represented something different, though. Not a primitive species that had never achieved spaceflight, but one that had somehow managed to bumble their way to the stars, despite their technological limitations. Perhaps, he mused aloud, we should consider annexing human space for their own protection. Clearly, they cannot adequately defend themselves with such primitive technology. The political implications could be significant, warned Communications Officer Thelness. The Galactic Council has rules about unprovoked annexation. Would it be unprovoked? Zixtal asked. We would be protecting them from pirates, hostile aliens, and the dangers of space travel in inadequate vessels. It would be a humanitarian mission. The bridge crew considered this logic. The hegemony had used similar reasoning to justify the annexation of 7 different star systems over the past 50 years. The Velkari brought order, efficiency, and advanced technology to primitive worlds. In return, those worlds provided resources and strategic locations for further expansion. 3 days later, another human ship entered their patrol sector. This one was even more pathetic than the first, a massive, ungainly vessel that appeared to be held together with external struts and support beams. Its hull was covered in what looked like welded patches, and its engine configuration was completely asymmetrical. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Vexprin, "the human vessel is broadcasting civilian identification codes, but I am detecting weapon signatures." "Of course you are," Zixtal replied. "They arm everything, even garbage haulers." "What kind of weapons?" "Multiple kinetic cannon mounts, missile tubes, and what appears to be a mass driver of some kind. All crude technology, but the vessel carries enough firepower to outfit a proper frigate." Zixtal shook his head in disbelief. "They have no concept of appropriate force deployment. Why would a civilian vessel need that much weaponry?" The answer came when they hailed the ship. The captain was a grizzled human female named Martinez, and she explained that her vessel, the Iron Maiden, was a commercial freighter operating in contested space. "We haul cargo where other ships won't go," she explained matter-of-factly. "Pirates, hostile aliens, solar storms, asteroid fields, we've seen it all. Sometimes you need to fight your way through." "Captain Martinez," Zixtal said, "your vessel appears to be a civilian cargo hauler with military-grade weapons. This configuration is highly unusual in civilized space." Captain Martinez laughed, a sound that somehow managed to convey both humor and menace. "Commander, in human space, every ship is potentially a warship. We learned that lesson the hard way during the colonial wars." "You arm civilian vessels for warfare?" Zixtal was genuinely confused. "How do you maintain proper military command structures? How do you coordinate fleet movements?" "We don't," Martinez replied simply. "Every captain is responsible for their own ship and crew. Every ship fights according to its capabilities. Every battle is won by people who refuse to give up." This concept was completely alien to the Velkari. Their military operated with rigid hierarchies, detailed battle plans, and precise coordination between vessels. The idea of independent civilian ships engaging in combat without central command was chaos. "Captain Martinez, how does your species coordinate military operations if every vessel operates independently?" "We don't coordinate," she said. "We improvise. We adapt. We overcome." After the Iron Maiden departed, Commander Zixtal called a meeting with his senior officers. The accumulated data on human capabilities was becoming increasingly puzzling. "Their technology is primitive," summarized Science Officer Meldun. "But their deployment patterns suggest extensive combat experience." "Their vessels are inefficient," added Engineering Officer Ralketh. "But they appear to be extremely durable. Multiple ships show evidence of catastrophic damage that has been repaired in the field." "Their tactics are chaotic," concluded Tactical Officer Vexprin, "but they seem to adapt quickly to changing circumstances." Commander Zixtal stood at the viewport, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were limping through space with their patched hulls and primitive weapons, somehow managing to survive in a galaxy that should have crushed them centuries ago. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we have been looking at this wrong. What if their apparent weaknesses are actually strengths we do not understand?" The bridge crew exchanged uncertain glances. Commander Zixtal was known for his tactical brilliance, but this suggestion seemed far-fetched. "Sir," ventured Navigation Officer Cliton, "their technology is demonstrably inferior. Their ships are slow, inefficient, and poorly armed by galactic standards." "Yes," Zixtal agreed, "but they survive. They expand. They fight battles and win them. How?" Over the following weeks, more reports came in from hegemony patrols throughout the sector. Human ships were appearing with increasing frequency, all displaying the same characteristics: primitive technology, improvised solutions, and crews that seemed completely unfazed by the dangers of space travel. The reports painted a picture of a species that had somehow managed to spread across dozens of star systems despite having technology that should have confined them to their home world. They flew ships that should have fallen apart, fought battles they should have lost, and survived encounters that should have destroyed them. Commander Zixtal began to wonder if the hegemony's intelligence reports on humanity were incomplete. There had to be something they were missing, some factor that explained how these primitive ships and their stubborn crews had managed to carve out a place in the galaxy. He would soon discover that his suspicions were correct, and that humanity's true strength had nothing to do with technology. The emergency klaxon woke Commander Zixtal from his rest cycle. His 4 eyes snapped open as the harsh sound echoed through his personal quarters aboard the hegemony flagship Inevitable Victory. Within seconds, he was on his feet and rushing toward the bridge. "Report," he demanded as he entered the command center. "Sir, we have received a distress signal from the mining station at Kepler 186F, reported Communications Officer Thelnis. "They are under attack by the Kethvar Ravagers." Zixtal's mandibles clicked in annoyance. The Kethvar were a nomadic species that survived by raiding established colonies and mining operations. They were dangerous but predictable. They struck fast, looted what they could, and disappeared before military forces could respond. "How many ships are they using?" he asked. 17 confirmed vessels, boss, sir. Mixed configuration, raiders, heavy destroyers, and at least 2 battle carriers. This was a significant force. The mining station's defenses would be overwhelmed within hours. Zixtal was calculating response times when another alarm sounded. "Sir," called Tactical Officer Vexprin, "I am detecting additional ships in the system. They appear to be human vessels." "How many?" Zixtal asked, though he expected a small number. Human ships traveled alone or in tiny groups at most. 43 ships and counting, sir. More are dropping out of faster-than-light travel every few minutes. Zixtal stared at the tactical display in amazement. Human ships were appearing throughout the system in numbers he had never seen before. They were still the same collection of patched-together vessels he had come to expect, but there were so many of them. "Sir," Vexprin continued, "the human ships are moving toward the mining station. They appear to be responding to the distress call." "All of them?" Zixtal asked. 43 ships responding to a distress call from a non-human station?" "Yes, sir, and more are still arriving." Zixtal watched the tactical display with growing confusion. The human ships were deploying in what appeared to be a completely random pattern. There was no formation, no obvious command structure, and no coordinated movement. It looked like chaos. "Are they communicating with each other?" he asked. "Yes, sir, but on multiple frequencies. It appears that different groups are using different communication protocols." "And the Kethvar?" "The raiders have noticed the human ships. They appear to be confused, sir. This is the largest human fleet anyone has recorded." Commander Zixtal made a decision. "Set course for Kepler 186F, maximum speed. I want to observe this encounter." The Inevitable Victory was one of the fastest ships in the hegemony fleet, and they reached the system within 6 hours. What they found defied Zixtal's understanding of human capabilities. The space around Kepler 186F had become a massive battlefield. Kethvar ships darted between human vessels like predators hunting prey, but the humans weren't behaving like prey. Instead of fleeing or forming defensive positions, they were actively engaging the raiders. "Sir," reported Science Officer Meldon, "I am reading over 60 human ships now. They range from small courier vessels to what appears to be a converted colony ship." "A colony ship in a battle?" Zixtal asked incredulously. "Yes, sir. It has been extensively modified with weapons and appears to be serving as a mobile command base." On the main screen, the battle unfolded like nothing Zixtal had ever seen. A group of human cargo haulers had surrounded a Kethvar destroyer, attacking it from all sides with kinetic weapons. Their individual firepower was minimal, but the combined assault was overwhelming the raiders' defenses. Meanwhile, a human passenger liner was dueling with a HFY battlecruiser. The passenger liner should have been destroyed instantly, but it was using hit-and-run tactics, striking at the cruiser's weapon systems and then retreating behind debris fields. "How are they coordinating this?" Zixtal muttered. "I see no command ship, no fleet formations, no tactical coordination." "Sir," interrupted Communications Officer Thelnis, "I have been monitoring human communications. They are not using centralized command. Each ship appears to be operating independently, but they are sharing tactical information in real time." "Impossible. No fleet can function without proper command structure." "Sir, permission to speak freely?" asked Tactical Officer Vexprin. "Granted. Perhaps they are not operating as a fleet. Perhaps they are operating as individuals who happen to share a common goal." Zixtal considered this concept. The Velkari military doctrine emphasized hierarchy, coordination, and centralized planning. The idea of dozens of independent ships somehow working together without formal command was completely foreign. As they watched, a human mining vessel engaged 3 HFY raiders simultaneously. The mining ship was massive but slow, and it should have been easy prey. Instead, it was using its industrial mining lasers as weapons while launching clouds of metallic chaff to confuse enemy targeting systems. "That mining ship," Zixtal said, pointing at the screen, "is fighting 3 military vessels and holding its own." "Yes, sir. It appears that human civilian vessels are routinely equipped for combat operations." A new development caught their attention. 5 human ships had formed a loose formation around a damaged HFY battle carrier. Instead of destroying the carrier, they were systematically dismantling its weapon systems. "They are disabling rather than destroying," observed Meldon. "Curious tactic." "Sir," called Thelnis, "I am receiving a communication from the human ships. They are requesting our assistance with prisoner processing." "Prisoner processing?" Zixtal was confused. The main screen showed a human captain, a middle-aged woman with graying hair and calm eyes. "Commander, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Determination. We have captured 17 HFY ships and approximately 400 prisoners. Do you have facilities to process them according to Galactic Council guidelines?" Zixtal stared at the screen. "Captain Chen, you have captured them?" "Yes, sir. Standard operating procedure for pirate encounters. We disable their ships, secure the crews, and turn them over to proper authorities for processing." "Standard operating procedure? You regularly capture pirate fleets?" Captain Chen looked puzzled by the question. "Of course. Dead pirates don't provide intelligence about other raider groups. Live pirates can be interrogated, tried, and potentially rehabilitated." This concept was completely alien to Zixtal. When the hegemony encountered pirates, they destroyed them. The idea of capturing entire fleets for processing had never occurred to them. "How many ships did you lose in this engagement?" Zixtal asked. "We lost 3 ships completely, and 11 more are seriously damaged. Casualties are light. Most crews managed to evacuate to other vessels before their ships were destroyed." Zixtal checked his tactical display. The human fleet had indeed lost several ships, but the majority were still operational. More importantly, they had completely defeated a HFY raiding fleet that should have been more than a match for twice their number. "Captain Chen," he said slowly, "how did you coordinate 60-plus independent ships without a central command structure?" Captain Chen smiled slightly. "Commander, we didn't coordinate them. Every captain made their own decisions based on the tactical situation. Every ship fought according to its capabilities. Every crew did what they thought was right." "But how did you prevent friendly fire incidents? How did you avoid tactical conflicts between different ships?" "Training, experience, and trust," Chen replied. "Every human ship captain knows how other human ships think and fight. We've been doing this for generations." As the communication ended, Zixtal realized that his understanding of human capabilities had been fundamentally flawed. These weren't primitive ships crewed by incompetent civilians. These were experienced combat vessels operated by people who had been fighting battles in space for centuries. "Sir," reported Meldon, "I am analyzing the battle data. The human tactical performance was remarkable. They used unconventional weapons configurations, improvised tactics, and adaptive strategies that completely confused the HFY. "What do you mean, unconventional weapons?" "For example, that mining ship used its ore processing systems to launch clouds of metal fragments that interfered with HFY targeting computers. 3 cargo haulers used their crane systems to physically grab and redirect HFY missiles. A passenger liner used its emergency beacon array as an electronic warfare system." Zixtal studied the battle recordings with growing amazement. Every human ship had found creative ways to use its existing systems as weapons or tactical advantages. They hadn't simply mounted military hardware on civilian vessels, they had weaponized the civilian systems themselves. "And their coordination?" he asked. "Completely decentralized but highly effective. Each ship seemed to know exactly what the others were capable of, and they adapted their tactics accordingly. When one ship was disabled, others immediately moved to cover its retreat. When an opportunity appeared, multiple ships exploited it simultaneously without any apparent coordination." "How is that possible?" "I believe," Meldon said carefully, "that they have developed a form of tactical telepathy. Not literal telepathy, but such extensive shared experience that they can predict each other's actions." Over the following days, Zixtal interviewed several human captains who had participated in the battle. Each conversation revealed new aspects of human space operations that challenged his assumptions. Captain Rodriguez of the cargo hauler New Texas explained that human ships routinely operated in dangerous areas because that was where the money was. "Safe routes don't pay well," he said. "We go where others won't, carry what others can't, and fight when we have to." Captain O'Brien of the passenger liner Celtic Dream described how civilian vessels had been converted for dual roles during the colonial wars. Every ship that could mount weapons did so. Every captain learned to fight. Every crew learned to survive. Captain Jackson of the mining vessel Rockbreaker talked about the improvised nature of human technology. "We use what works," he said simply. "If mining lasers can cut through asteroids, they can cut through enemy hulls. If cargo cranes can move ore containers, they can move enemy missiles." Each interview reinforced the same themes: adaptability, improvisation, and extensive combat experience. These weren't civilians playing at being soldiers. These were combat veterans who happened to fly civilian ships. The most disturbing conversation was with Captain Singh of the colony ship New Harmony. She explained that her vessel carried 15,000 colonists and their equipment to a new world. "Why is a colony ship armed for battle?" Zixtal asked. "Because space is dangerous," Singh replied matter-of-factly. "Pirates, hostile aliens, equipment failures, natural disasters, we have to be ready for anything. These people are depending on me to get them safely to their new home." "But your ship was actively engaged in combat operations." "Yes, because there were people in danger. The mining station had families, workers, civilians who needed help. We don't abandon people just because we're carrying colonists." "You risked 15,000 lives to help strangers?" Captain Singh looked at him with an expression he couldn't interpret. "Commander, if we don't help strangers in distress, what kind of people are we? What kind of civilization are we building among the stars?" This conversation haunted Zixtal for days. The hegemony would never risk a colony ship in combat operations. The mathematical calculation was simple. 15,000 lives were more valuable than a few hundred miners. But humans seemed to operate by different mathematics, one that factored in concepts like honor, duty, and mutual assistance. A week after the battle, new intelligence reports reached Zixtal's desk. Hegemony patrols throughout the sector were reporting increased human activity. Human ships were appearing in systems they had never visited before, offering assistance to colonies and stations, trading with species they had never contacted, and establishing new shipping routes. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Kithmak, "it appears that the battle at Kepler 186F was not an isolated incident. Human ships routinely respond to distress calls throughout this sector of space." "All human ships?" "Any human ship that receives a distress call appears to respond if they are capable of providing assistance. This includes civilian vessels with no military capability. They risk their ships and crews to help strangers?" "Consistently, sir. I have 17 documented cases in the past month alone." Zixtal stood at his viewport, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were carrying cargo, transporting passengers, mining asteroids, and exploring new worlds. But they were also responding to emergencies, fighting pirates, and helping anyone who needed assistance. The more he learned about human operations in space, the more he realized that the hegemony's intelligence estimates had been completely wrong. Humans weren't primitive newcomers stumbling around in obsolete ships. They were experienced spacers who had developed their own unique approach to interstellar civilization. "Kithmak," he said slowly, "what is the current military assessment of human capabilities?" "Officially, sir, human forces are rated as minimal threat. Their technology is primitive, their ships are inefficient, and their military organization is chaotic." "And unofficially?" The intelligence officer hesitated. "Unofficially, sir, I believe we have seriously underestimated them. Their technological limitations are offset by extensive experience, adaptive tactics, and what appears to be unlimited willingness to engage in combat." "What do you recommend?" "I recommend a comprehensive reevaluation of human capabilities, sir, and perhaps more cautious diplomatic relations." Commander Zixtal nodded. He had reached the same conclusion. The humans were not what they appeared to be, and the hegemony needed to understand them better before making any aggressive moves. Unfortunately, political events were already in motion that would force a direct confrontation, and Zixtal would soon discover that even his revised estimates of human capabilities were woefully inadequate. The political crisis erupted without warning. Hegemony High Command had decided that human expansion posed a potential threat to galactic stability. Their reasoning was simple. If humans could defeat Kethvar raiders with converted civilian vessels, what might they accomplish with actual military ships? Commander Zixtal received his orders via encrypted transmission while patrolling the outer rim of human space. The message was brief and direct. Establish a blockade of the Sol system, humanity's homeworld, and demand their immediate surrender and integration into the hegemony. Any resistance would be met with overwhelming force. The fleet assembled for this operation was impressive by any standard. 12 battle cruisers, 30 destroyers, and over 100 smaller vessels had been gathered under Fleet Admiral Morthak's command. It was enough firepower to conquer most star systems, and High Command was confident it would be more than sufficient to intimidate the humans into submission. "Remember," Admiral Morthak addressed his commanders during the final briefing, "we are dealing with a species that relies on improvised tactics and converted civilian vessels. Their largest military ships appear to be refitted cargo haulers and passenger liners. Show strength, demand compliance, and they will surrender rather than face destruction." Commander Zixtal raised a concern. "Admiral, intelligence reports suggest that human capabilities may be greater than initially assessed. Perhaps we should proceed with more caution." Admiral Morthak's mandibles clicked in dismissal. "Commander, your reports describe humans defeating pirates and raiders. We are the hegemony fleet. We have conquered 17 star systems and defeated the combined navies of the Thelkari Empire. A handful of converted civilian ships pose no threat to us." The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system in perfect formation. Their arrival was intended to be a demonstration of power. Over 140 hegemony warships appearing simultaneously, their weapons powered and shields raised. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Thelnis, "we are receiving multiple hails from human vessels throughout the system. They are requesting our intentions and asking us to identify ourselves." "Ignore them for now," Admiral Morthak commanded. "I want them to see our strength first. How many human ships are present in the system?" "Approximately 30 vessels, sir, mixed civilian and what appear to be military configurations." Admiral Morthak studied the tactical display. The human ships were scattered throughout the system, most of them near the inhabited worlds. They showed no signs of forming defensive formations or preparing for combat. "They are not even trying to mount a defense," he observed with satisfaction. "Open a communication channel to all human vessels." The transmission went out on all frequencies, ensuring that every ship and station in the system would receive it. Admiral Morthak's image appeared on screens throughout human space. "People of Earth," he began, "I am Fleet Admiral Morthak of the Galactic Hegemony. Your species has been judged to pose a potential threat to galactic stability. You will immediately surrender all military assets and submit to integration into the hegemony. Any resistance will result in the destruction of your ships and the occupation of your worlds." The response came from a human admiral named Rebecca Harrison, broadcasting from a space station orbiting Earth. She appeared calm and professional, showing no signs of fear despite facing overwhelming odds. "Admiral Morthak," she said, "we appreciate your concerns, but humanity declines your offer of integration. We prefer to remain independent. We suggest you withdraw your fleet and open diplomatic negotiations instead." Admiral Morthak was amazed by the human's audacity. "Admiral Harrison, you are facing over 140 hegemony warships. Your entire system contains perhaps 30 vessels, most of them civilian. Do you truly believe you can resist us?" "Admiral," Harrison replied, "we've faced worse odds before. We'll manage." That phrase, "we'll manage," had become frustratingly familiar to Zixtal. Every human captain seemed to use it when facing impossible situations. He was beginning to understand that it meant something more than simple confidence. "Sir," interrupted Tactical Officer Vexprin, "I am detecting new signatures at the edge of the system. Multiple ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel." "More hegemony reinforcements?" Admiral Morthak asked. "No, sir. The signatures are unusual." On the tactical display, new contacts began appearing. The first was a massive vessel, larger than any human ship they had previously encountered. Its design was completely different from the patched-together civilian vessels they were familiar with. This ship was sleek, purposeful, and radiated an aura of deadly efficiency. "Sir," Vexprin continued, his voice carrying a note of confusion, "that vessel registers as Terran Navy classification. The identification reads TNS Indomitable, Destroyer class." "Destroyer?" Admiral Morthak scoffed. "That ship is larger than our battle cruisers." More ships continued to arrive. Each one was different from the civilian vessels they had come to associate with humanity. These ships were clearly military vessels, built for war rather than converted from civilian use. "Sir," reported Science Officer Mel Dunn, "I am detecting 47 additional vessels, all showing Terran Navy identification. The classifications are confusing. They label their largest ships as destroyers and cruisers, but they are significantly larger than our vessels of similar classification." Commander Zixtal studied the new arrivals with growing unease. These ships looked nothing like the improvised vessels he had encountered. Their hulls were smooth and unmarked, their weapon mounts were clearly purpose-built, and their energy signatures suggested far more advanced technology than humans were supposed to possess. "Sir," Vexaprin added, "the lead vessel is hailing us." "Put it through," Admiral Morthak commanded, though his confidence seemed slightly shaken. The screen showed a human male in a crisp military uniform. His insignia marked him as an admiral, and his demeanor was completely different from the civilian captains they had encountered. This man radiated military professionalism and quiet authority. "Admiral Morthak," the human said, "I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the Terran Navy destroyer Indomitable. You have entered human space with hostile intent and issued ultimatums to our civilian government. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Admiral Morthak regained his composure. "Admiral Chen, your threats are meaningless. We outnumber you 3-1, and our technology is superior to anything humanity has developed." Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. "Admiral, those civilian ships you've been observing represent our merchant marine and colonial fleet. They are not our military." "Those were not military vessels?" Admiral Morthak asked, confused. "No, those were literally civilian ships operated by civilian crews for civilian purposes. The fact that they can defend themselves is a necessity of operating in dangerous space, but they are not our military." Admiral Morthak felt the first stirrings of doubt. "Then where is your military?" Admiral Chen gestured, and the tactical display updated to show the newly arrived human ships in detail. "Admiral, you are looking at one destroyer group of the Terran Navy. This is what our military looks like." The specifications that appeared on the hegemony screens were shocking. The TNS Indomitable was classified as a destroyer, but it was larger and more heavily armed than most hegemony battlecruisers. Its armor was composed of materials the Velkari had never seen, and its weapon systems included technologies that shouldn't exist. "Impossible," Admiral Morthak declared. "Your species uses chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. These specifications show antimatter reactors and particle beam arrays." "Admiral," Chen replied patiently, "chemical rockets and kinetic weapons are what we use for civilian vessels operating in civilized space. They're reliable, maintainable, and sufficient for dealing with pirates and raiders. Our military uses different technology." Commander Zix Tal studied the tactical readouts with growing alarm. The human military ships were not just larger than expected. They incorporated technology that was theoretically beyond human capabilities. Quantum field generators, matter conversion reactors, gravitational manipulation systems. These were technologies the hegemony itself had only recently mastered. "Sir," whispered Science Officer Meldon, "those power signatures are consistent with zero-point energy extraction. That should be impossible for their technological level." Admiral Morthak attempted to regain control of the situation. "Admiral Chen, even if your ships are more advanced than our intelligence suggested, you are still outnumbered 3-1. Surrender now and avoid unnecessary bloodshed." Admiral Chen considered this for a moment. "Admiral, let me explain something about human military doctrine. We don't build ships to fight fair fights. We build ships to win fights." Before Admiral Morthak could respond, the tactical situation changed dramatically. The TNS Indomitable fired a single weapon, a particle beam that crossed the distance between fleets in less than a second, and struck the hegemony flagship's forward shields. The impact should have been absorbed by the flagship's defensive systems. Instead, the beam punched through the shields, through the armor, and into the ship's hull. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. "Sir," called Engineering Officer Ralketh, "forward shields are down to 30%, and we have hull breaches on decks 7-12. That single shot caused more damage than most ships could inflict in a sustained bombardment." Admiral Morthak stared at the damage displays in shock. No single weapon should have been capable of penetrating hegemony shields and armor so easily. "That was a warning shot," Admiral Chen announced calmly. "Admiral, your fleet is now facing the choice between withdrawal and destruction. I recommend withdrawal." "You cannot defeat over 100 ships with 47, Admiral Morthak protested. "Watch us," Admiral Chen replied. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for generations. The Terran Navy didn't fight like any fleet the hegemony had ever encountered. Their ships moved with impossible precision, their weapons struck with devastating accuracy, and their tactics were unlike anything in galactic military doctrine. The TNS Indomitable led the charge, its massive hull accelerating at rates that should have been impossible for its size. Its weapon systems engaged multiple hegemony vessels simultaneously, and each shot found its target with surgical precision. Shields collapsed, armor melted, and weapon systems exploded under the focused fire. But it wasn't just the flagship. Every human military vessel fought with the same deadly efficiency. They used weapons the hegemony had never seen, deployed countermeasures that negated familiar tactics, and moved in formations that seemed to defy the laws of physics. "Sir," reported Tactical Officer Vex Prin, his voice shaking, "the human ships are using some form of gravitic propulsion. They are accelerating and turning at rates that should crush their crews." "And their weapons?" Admiral Morthak demanded. "Multiple unknown technologies, sir. Particle beams that ignore our shields, kinetic projectiles that phase through solid matter, and what appears to be weaponized gravity." Commander Zixtal watched the battle unfold with horrified fascination. The human ships moved like predators among prey, selecting targets with careful deliberation and destroying them with minimum effort. There was no wasted motion, no unnecessary destruction, just methodical, efficient elimination of threats. "Sir," called Communications Officer Thelnis, "we are receiving surrender offers from 17 hegemony vessels. They are requesting permission to withdraw." Admiral Morthak looked at the tactical display. In less than 20 minutes of combat, his overwhelming numerical advantage had been reduced to rough parity. Human ships had disabled or destroyed over 50 hegemony vessels without suffering a single loss. "How is this possible?" he asked. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication channel. "Admiral Morthak, you made the mistake of assuming that what you observed was representative of our full capabilities. Those civilian ships you encountered were operated by merchants, colonists, and traders. They use improvised tactics and converted equipment because that's what civilians do. They make do with what they have." "And your military?" "Our military has been preparing for this conversation for over 2 centuries. Every weapon system, every piece of technology, every tactical doctrine has been developed with one goal in mind: the defense of human space against superior forces." The tactical display showed the remaining hegemony ships in full retreat. The human military vessels made no attempt to pursue. They simply maintained their defensive positions and watched the withdrawal. "Admiral Morthak," Chen continued, "humanity learned something important during our colonial wars. When you're outnumbered, outgunned, and facing superior technology, you don't fight fair. You fight smart. You prepare for the worst possible scenario and then build weapons that can handle something even worse." Commander Zixtal studied the human ships with new understanding. These vessels hadn't been built to fight pirates or raiders. They had been built to fight major galactic powers. Every system, every weapon, every piece of technology had been designed specifically to defeat ships like the ones in the hegemony fleet. "Sir," Science Officer Meldon reported quietly, "I have analyzed the human weapon systems during the engagement. Their technology is not just advanced. It appears to be specifically designed to counter hegemony ships. They knew our shield frequencies, our armor composition, and our tactical doctrines. They were prepared for us," Zixtal realized. Admiral Chen seemed to hear his comment. "Commander Zixtal, humanity has been aware of the hegemony for decades. We've studied your technology, analyzed your tactics, and prepared countermeasures. Every ship in the Terran Navy has been built with the assumption that we would eventually face your fleets in combat." "You knew this day would come?" Admiral Morthak asked. "Admiral, when a species builds an empire by conquering primitive worlds, It's only a matter of time before they encounter someone who isn't primitive. We've been waiting for you." As the surviving hegemony ships retreated beyond the system's edge, Admiral Chen made one final communication. "Admiral Morthak, when you report back to your high command, please give them a message from humanity. We are not interested in conquest or expansion at anyone else's expense. We are interested in being left alone to develop our civilization in peace. And if the hegemony decides to return with a larger fleet?" Admiral Morthak asked. Admiral Chen smiled, and the expression was not comforting. "Admiral, what you faced today was one destroyer group, 47 ships from a single naval district. The Terran Navy has 43 naval districts. If you return with a larger fleet, we will respond with a larger fleet. If you escalate, we will escalate. If you threaten human civilians, you will discover that our merchant marines are the least dangerous thing in human space." The communication ended, leaving the retreating hegemony fleet to contemplate their defeat. Commander Zixtal stared at the tactical records of the battle, trying to understand how humanity had concealed such advanced military capabilities. The answer, when it came to him, was both simple and terrifying. Humanity hadn't concealed their military capabilities. They had compartmentalized them. The civilian ships that traveled throughout the galaxy were exactly what they appeared to be. Civilian ships. But behind them, hidden in the depths of human space, was a military force that had been specifically designed to defeat galactic superpowers. "Sir," reported Intelligence Officer Kithmak, "I have been analyzing communication intercepts from the human fleet. It appears that the ships we face today represent approximately 3% of total Terran Navy strength." 3%? Admiral Morthak asked weakly. "Yes, sir. If their statements are accurate, humanity maintains over 1,500 ships of similar capability to those we encountered today." Admiral Morthak sat in his command chair, staring at the stars. The hegemony had built their empire by identifying primitive species and conquering them before they could develop advanced technology. But humanity had turned that strategy against them. They had appeared primitive while secretly developing the most advanced military force in known space. "Commander Zixtal," Admiral Morthak said slowly, "prepare a full report for High Command. Include your recommendations for future relations with humanity." Zixtal nodded. His report would be simple. Humanity was not a species to be conquered. They were a species to be respected, feared, and very carefully avoided. The patched-together civilian ships he had initially mocked were the least dangerous things in human space, and even they had proven more capable than anyone had expected. As the hegemony fleet limped home, word of their defeat spread throughout the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity had emerged as a major power, and they had done so in the most human way possible, by appearing weak while preparing for strength, by building the tools they needed rather than the tools they wanted, and by refusing to back down when threatened. The age of easy conquest was over. The humans had made sure of that. In the years that followed, the galaxy would learn to deal with humanity as an equal, rather than a primitive species to be pitied or exploited. The Terran Navy would become a symbol of defensive capability, while human civilian ships continued to carry cargo, transport passengers, and explore new worlds with their characteristic resilience and adaptability. And whenever someone asked how humanity had managed to build such an advanced military while appearing so primitive, the answer was always the same: we manage.